Hey guys, Josh from the Ancient History Guy here. Hello and welcome. Hope you are all doing great. Anyways, today we are going to be focusing on the fascinating and somewhat under-talked ancient power, which is Carthage. Today's video is specifically going to be talking about the founding of the city, as well as some of the background about the people who actually started the colony. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. So Carthage was founded by a group of people called Phoenicians. Now, the Phoenicians came from an island called Tyre in the Levant. Just to put things in perspective, here's a map of Carthage, and here is Tyre. It's a very long way apart from each other. So, the obvious question is, how did the Phoenicians do this, and why? Furthermore, who on earth were the Phoenicians? Well, this is actually a fairly important historical question to ask. You see, the Phoenicians were traders, but not just normal traders. Probably the best traders in the ancient world. They were primarily involved in trading overseas, and as such were extremely proficient shipbuilders as well as seafarers. This, together with the fact that Tyre was probably one of the only places which could produce purple dye, meant that basically it was rich. It was stinking rich. This is unlike how we can get clothing in any colour we want today. Back then it was a whole process. You would have to get certain plants, animals and other substances in order to make the dye. Tyre specifically had access to a certain sea snail, which was perfect for making a deep purple dye. Purple dye from Tyre became extremely sought after, so much so that it became known as the colour worn by kings, because, it was very expensive. This, together with their expert shipbuilding, trading and seafaring skills, resulted in the Phoenicians of Tyre becoming extremely rich. As trade across the known world blossomed, the Phoenicians began to set up trading posts in the countries they were trading with these trading posts eventually growing into colonies. These colonies had great impacts on the ancient world, specifically in Greece, where the Greeks adopted the Phoenician alphabet, something that we still directly use today. So the Phoenicians, needless to say, are actually quite a big deal in history. They pretty much wrote the rule book, literally, on trade and how to turn a simple business into a trade empire. Without the Phoenicians, we would not have the alphabet we know used today. Their connections to the outside world made them masters of the sea trade, something which became the envy of numerous Eastern empires. As a result, many empires tried and failed to capture the island of Tyre. However, as the rest of the Levant and Phoenicia as a whole became dominated by the powerful Assyrian Empire, Tyre began paying tribute to the vicious empire. Despite this, the city seemed to have maintained a strange amount of independence, expanding their trade monopoly even further. Now, much like all ancient cities, Tyre was ruled by a king, and the royal court was not without its dramas. Assassinations and bribes were the order of the day, and it's during one of these assassinations that our story begins. Now, according to legend, when a new king came to power, whose name is so freaking long I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, he murdered his sister's husband, a high priest who had quite a bit of influence over the city. His sister, named Dido, fled Tyre along with a large group of influential nobles, following the trade routes of the coast of Africa. Once she arrived in Africa, she haggled a deal with a local chieftain for some land on which to build a colony. The chieftain, thinking he was clever, said that she could have as much land as an ox hide could cover. In response, Dido ordered the hide to be cut into thin strips, thus allowing her to mark out quite a sizable amount of land on which to build her city. A man of his word, the chieftain allowed Dido to build her city, which was named Carthage. Here the legend gets a little bit blurred. Dido had found the perfect spot on which to build a city, as there was a natural port just a short distance away. This meant that Carthage almost immediately became a hub of trade and grew extremely rich extremely quickly. Now, according to the Greek version of the legend, the very chieftain who had given her the land asked for her hand in marriage, and as a way of getting out the proposal, Dido burnt herself on a pyre, which one might consider to be a tad bit extreme. Now, my preferred version of this myth is the tale which links the founding of Carthage to both the Trojan War and the founding of Rome. You see, the Greeks did not kill everyone when they sacked the famous city of Troy. A small group of refugees led by the prince Aeneas actually escaped and began searching for a new homeland. One of the ports they stopped off at was Carthage, and whilst taking refuge there, Aeneas and Dido supposedly fell in love. The Trojans seemed to have been quite comfortable in Carthage, so much so that the gods literally had to come down to earth and remind them that they actually had to find a new home. Aeneas and his Trojans set sail in the middle of the night, eventually landing in Italy and founding Rome. Dido, heartbroken, threw herself onto a pyre, which was probably burning all of her ex's things he had left behind, and cursed the Trojans, saying her people and theirs would never be allies. They would always be enemies, thus foreshadowing the eventual war between Carthage and Rome. Carthage in reality was probably founded by traders, as the route was already heavily commercialized by the Phoenicians. Indeed, just a few miles away from Carthage was an even older Phoenician settlement called Utica. Utica probably predated Carthage by about half a century, and so was already an established trading colony in the area. It's largely believed that the Phoenicians who founded Carthage relied quite heavily on Utica's support in the first few decades. This was until Carthage rapidly grew due to its prime locations, the fact that a lot of the Tyrians fled to Carthage after they were absorbed by the Babylonians, blah 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 blah. Within no time, Carthage had grown even more prosperous and more important than Utica. The colony was also rapidly growing, eventually growing so big that Carthage was able to found colonies of its own, mainly in Sicily, Sardinia, and along the coasts of Africa. These colonies brought more and more wealth into Carthage to the point where it was the dominant maritime power in the Western Mediterranean. So what do I think of this? Well, I think the legend is probably based on real people. We know for a fact that Dido's brother did actually rule Tyre, and that Carthage was a Phoenician trade colony. I think Dido in some form probably existed, and she may have played a part in the founding of Carthage. However, if she did exist and the story of her brother killing her husband is true, it sounds like a rather low-effort political maneuver. Why stop at just killing her husband? Why not just purge all of your political rivals at once? This isn't exactly far-fetched, as the royal court of Macedon, for example, would go through similar political purges whenever a new king came to power. And if Dido's husband was such a threat, it makes sense to continue the killing until at least the major allies of the king's political foes were dealt with. I think in all likelihood Carthage did originally start out as a trading colony, probably formed by a few merchants and a few nobles who had a vested interest in doing business in the west, which was proven particularly profitable as evidenced by the fact that the city of Utica had been existing for quite a while now. The spot that these Phoenician traders chose just so happened to be extremely good, resulting in the colony flourishing into a city. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.